Three, two.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. Keisha Davis, the county's health officer, Dr. James Bridgers, who is the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Earl Statter, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and our special guest this afternoon is Dr. Jermaine Williams, who is the president of Montgomery College. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Mr. County Executive, good afternoon. How are you?
Uh, it's hard to answer that.
Okay. That was an answer.
I think it kind of sends everything. First of all, thank everybody for joining us today. According to our president, this is Liberation Day. I'm trying to figure out who's been liberated. It seems that racists have been liberated, homophobes have been liberated, xenophobes have been liberated, climate deniers are liberated, vaccine deniers are liberated, and major corporations are liberated. Our corporate behemoths are being set free from regulations to protect communities from dangerous chemicals and environmental protections, any requirements to address climate change, any requirements to prevent employers from reverting to racist and sexist hiring policies, anything that controls any of the controls that are meant to keep free and fair elections. Note, Musk actually is paying for votes, which I used to think was a violation of the law. Apparently, you can buy votes now. And the massive infusion of corporate money into elections from a free press that is now under attack because any commentary and criticism of government policy is being viewed as basically traitorous and fake news. This is the kind of crap that Putin and the other dictators have been doing, assaulting the media, silencing the media, claiming anybody that doesn't support them is a traitor or serving other interests. And we're beginning to see this here in the United States, and it is absolutely frightening. I've been politically active since the mid-'60s, not my mid-'60s, but the actual 1960s. And we've never seen such an assault on American values and on the freedom of the press. And, you know, I'm one of those people who lived through Richard Nixon. Nixon was a pussycat compared to the kind of nonsense that's being right now. Ronald Reagan was a conservative, and even he doesn't touch the level of nonsense that we're seeing. But it's I think it's a sad day for this country and a sad day for Montgomery County. Yesterday, we had a very sad day as we witnessed hundreds of federal workers instantly lose their jobs and livelihoods. This is a stressful time for them and their families, and we're going to feel those job losses and the ripple effects throughout every community in the county. Our thoughts are with them during this difficult time, and we want to make sure that every impacted worker or business knows, you know, that we're here to help and to figure out what we can do to support them. This is not going to be easy because we've never had to deal with these number of people suddenly being put out of work before. At the beginning of the Trump administration, Montgomery County had 77,550 federal employees residing here, and we had about 48,400 jobs in the county. HHS, which includes NIH and FDA, is not only the county's biggest employer, but also the state of Maryland's biggest employer. HHS last week projected it would lay off about 10,000 people, in addition to the 10,000 who took buyouts or retirement offers. Last week, HHS Secretary Kennedy announced NIH alone will see 1,200 layoffs. This is really an assault on research and the work being done by scientists to try to make life better for people. And I've said this before, you know, the main aim, you know, the people being fired are the victims. But the reason they're the victims is the federal government's determination to make sure that people don't get any understanding of what causes disease, what the environmental impacts of things are, and what the health impacts are of, you know, drugs and chemicals that are put into the environment. People are the collateral damage because the only way to shut down that research is to get rid of the people doing the research. And the importance of shutting down the research from the perspective of Trump and his cronies is you can't be required to fix something if you don't know about it. So if we can make sure that scientific research isn't being done into what are the causes that might in fact lead to discovering that, I don't know, that lead is really bad for people and asbestos was really deadly and cigarettes were deadly, that's the kind of research they want to shut down because they want corporations to have a free hand to do what they want without regard what it does to the American people. It's pathetic and it's awful, but apparently it is what it is for the moment. Nationally, in January, 4,000 federal workers were laid off, and the number jumped to 22,000 in February. Labor Department statistics from the year so far end there, so you don't yet know what's happened in March, but these totals are sure to grow. And these numbers are not just federal employees; these figures don't include federal contractors and NGOs that have lost funds, contracts, and work. So we're still not getting the number from companies in Montgomery County and around the country that actually provided work to these federal agencies and are no longer doing that. Nor do these numbers account for all the businesses that serve the federal government, whether those companies are nearby restaurants or vendors. We continue to monitor the Maryland Department of Labor's work adjustment and retraining notification site for March. We counted 1,430 jobs lost since Inauguration Day. Many of those jobs can be directly tied to decisions made by the administration. This shows the environment that we find ourselves in, with the pool of job applicants actually growing larger now. And while the future of these workers and their families is very much up in the air and concerning, I'm also very concerned about what happens to the important work they do, because it appears that anything related to climate, healthcare access, education, social justice is going to be canceled. You can't even use words like social justice or climate change if you're describing a project that you're working on. It's like automatically a disqualifier from getting funded. If you don't think that's incredible, you're not awake. This is a real serious problem for all of us. You just can't fire this many people without impacting the mission of their work, which is to keep us healthy and safe. Even more than the employees under attack, it's really the work that they're doing that is under attack. It's as if the prime goal is to erase the 20th century, the first 25 years of this century. And the pandemic was just a mirage, and the lives lost are of no concern. Apparently, no lessons to be learned, no concern about pandemics going forward or what happens with viruses if they wind up becoming lethal and spreading rapidly. It's as if this never happened. Gore Vidal once called this nation the United States of amnesia. Never in my life have I seen such a change in course over the importance of science and research. And I got to say, Gore Vidal got it right. We are the United States of amnesia. As a county government, we can't provide jobs for all those who lost their jobs, but we can continue to support the local workforce and to create the kind of opportunities that lead to full-time employment. Initial analysis of the job market, both in size and type of jobs, does not augur well for the people who are now be seeking new jobs. That is one reason we worked with several partners to establish Mobilize Montgomery, which we launched last week. By visiting and registering mobilizemontgomery.com, impacted workers and businesses can learn about the latest opportunities to connect with area employers and to learn about webinars that could help them during these trying times. So far, we've had nearly 300 job seekers register with Mobilize Montgomery in just the first week. On Monday, we hosted Open for Business procurement fair that was filled to capacity with businesses looking for new procurement opportunities in the county. I also visited with our restaurant and hospitality businesses at Moco Eats and Beverage Showcase that was hosted by Visit Montgomery. At both events, attendees were concerned about the impacts of these federal decisions, whether those concerns were layoffs or the looming tariffs. There's a lot to be worried about in the business community. While those events were going on in Silver Spring and Rockville, Montgomery College was hosting a job fair for workers in the health and science sector, with bio and life science businesses looking for these types of job skills. Over 120 people registered to attend, and another 200 were on the waiting list. I thought this quote from one of the attendees is important to note. The person said, "I have a lot of work left in me, and I enjoy science. I love what I do, so that's a little bit scary, but I feel very hopeful." a lot hopeful today. Those words are important for all us who members. We triage the impacts of these job losses. We might not be able to create jobs or solve problems entirely, but we can and should provide hope and do as much as we can concretely, and that's our intention. Tonight, the Council is going to host United in Service Support Information Session that's focused on navigating new employment opportunities and career pathways for federal workers. The event is at 7 p.m. on Zoom, and you can find details about the webinar on the Council's website. I'm happy to welcome back the president of Montgomery College, Dr. Jermaine Williams, to this media briefing and thank him for Montgomery College for hosting this job fair. Montgomery College is one of our county's best assets and resources for students and workers at any age. I'm glad you can join us today to talk about what you're doing and offering to those who are in need and looking for new opportunities. So I'll stop and turn it over to Dr. Williams.
Thank you very much, County Executive. First and foremost, thank you for your leadership. We are here and able to say, because of leadership like yours, that during these times of tumult and ever-evolving situations, that Montgomery College stays committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and serving all of our residents so everyone can achieve the goals that they desire, and everyone can really focus on having a job with a family-sustaining wage that contributes to our workforce, to our economy, and to our community. If there's any individuals who are a little unfamiliar with Montgomery College, really quickly, Montgomery College, we serve about a little more than 45,000 individuals, campuses in Tacoma Park, Silver Spring, Rockville, Germantown, and our fantastic East County Education Center, which is, again, thanks to leaders like our county executive. We are an extremely diverse institution, and we take pride in that diversity. And it's a continuum of diversity, from the 50% of students who identify as first generation to the 30% of students who identify as Hispanic or Latino, to the 1 in 4 students who identify as Black or African American, the 12% of our students who identify as Asian, and 10% of our students who are international students. We are extremely diverse in many ways, and very, very proud of that. The county executive mentioned the job fair that we had on Monday, specifically for displaced workers in the STEM fields. And while it was a positive outcome. It was a positive outcome for a horrible reason. As you mentioned, County Executive, the event should not have needed to occur. However, in these times, certain pieces are needed that we didn't think would be needed. And this was one of those. And we are thankful for your support again, to be able to stand up such a fantastic event in a great facility at our Germantown campus. We are supporting displaced federal workers in many ways. When I think about, first, the job fairs. So the one that you mentioned, County Executive, on Monday, there's actually one occurring today as well on the Germantown campus, one on April 10th at our Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus, and one April 25th. And we can get the details out so the individuals viewing can have this information. We've consolidated all of this information into one site, so individuals can easily find and navigate the information, because we are providing a multitude of resources that are free of charge. And when I think about that, to that list is resume and job search assistance, County Executive, also career coaching. And as you know, we partner deeply with WorkSource Montgomery, deeply to the point where they actually have a site at the East County Education Center. So when we think about helping individuals transition, whether they're upskilling, reskilling, or new skilling, which may often be phrased as career changers, Montgomery College is really working hard in collaboration with the entire county and beyond to really help our displaced federal workers. The last thing I'll share is, I don't want to take up too much time, actually 2 pieces, and this may be new, so I really want to put this out, is there's opportunities to earn credit for your federal work experience, right? Our jargon for that is credit for prior learning. It's a real thing, but it's a real kind of higher ed jargon. So it's a way to convert professional experience, military training, or certifications into college credit. This helps you save time and money, really by acquiring courses essentially because you've taken those courses in the real world. So please know when you're engaging with Montgomery College, there is that opportunity as well. And the last thing I will say, County Executive, is just highlighting our fast track training for in-demand careers. So when we think about the opportunities that we have around information technology and cybersecurity, we have certifications in IT, cloud computing, and cybersecurity, CompTIA security, AWS cloud, healthcare and public health, certifications in medical billing, health IT and patient care, project management and business operations. So, there's PMI, Lean Six Sigma. There's just a multitude of opportunities again for reskilling, upskilling, and or new skilling. Montgomery College wants to continue to be the community's college, and we are very serious, as we are about all of our efforts with supporting our displaced federal workers. And I appreciate again, County Executive, your leadership and the opportunity to share a little bit today. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Members of the media, any questions for Dr. Williams regarding MC's resources for displaced federal workers? Please raise your hands. No questions for Dr. Williams this afternoon? Well, thank you, Dr. Williams, for joining us. We do know, there's Judy Hirth from the Greater Olney News. Good afternoon, Judy.
Thank you. I was having a little technical difficulty. Dr. Williams, I'm wondering, it may be too soon to tell in terms of actual numbers, hard and fast numbers, but what's the tenor like on the campuses with STEM careers and STEM education? Are students at all concerned about careers in those fields, given the climate in the government and federal workers losing jobs? Are they continuing with education in those fields? Are they switching? What are you hearing in terms of those who might be studying science and wondering if they should continue studying science?
Thank you for the question. By all accounts, to date, students are energized about science. They're energized about STEM. They see what's occurring in our society, including like right now, and it's making them more enthusiastic about creating change through STEM opportunities. So we have not seen a transition. Definitely something that we want to keep an eye on. But I think based on, in part, the environment of Montgomery County, the environment that's created by our leadership, and that environment that really runs through Montgomery College, as they continue to see STEM opportunities as a way to really create change, and our society needed change. So, but I do appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie Bixby, Bethesda, actually Montgomery today, Bethesda today. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Hi. Hi, Mr. Williams. I don't know if I'm sorry, I may have missed this. You may have addressed this. Could you talk about like if there are going to be lower cost or financial aid opportunities for displaced workers who seek these certifications and classes?
Certainly, absolutely. So there are resources that are the shared resources that are free in terms of resume and job search assistance and career coaching and those kind of components, and obviously the career fairs, the job fairs. What I will share is also there is when we think about aid and we think about support, we think about state aid, and we also think about federal aid, which is still intact. So we have that, and we have scholarship opportunities at the institution. So there are multiple different ways and mechanisms in terms of support for financial support to pursue educational goals. So, but what I would encourage is individuals reaching out directly to Montgomery College, because everybody's specific situation is a little different, and then we can help guide individuals through that financial component if that poses any challenge.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Jeannie. Dr. Williams, we know you have a 1 o'clock hard stop. It is exactly 1 o'clock. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And We know you have to depart. Thank you again.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Carnick,
thank you again. Thank you again. And thank you again. And as always, County Executive Elridge, for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. County Executive, other topics.
So next thing I want to talk about is Bill 225 before the County Council on converting empty office space into housing. I'm very concerned about the way this bill has shaped itself, and I'm hoping the council will delay the vote and use that time to further explore issues related to this bill. We usually expedite legislation because we're dealing with something that needs immediate attention. There is no urgency for the hurried consideration of the bill. There's nothing happened, nothing that's going to be built or not built if this bill is delayed another month or two to have the kind of discussions it warrants. This is a corporate giveaway. There's no other way to put it than that. Coming at a time when county resources are constrained and may face more limitations coming from our president. Giving away money to millionaires can only lead to cuts to services for residents or pressure to raise taxes on them. We should not be cavalier about giving away money. I want to briefly explain some of my concerns with the bill. First of all, it would give an automatic abatement of property taxes, automatic being the operative word, to certain developers who convert or demolish a 50% vacant commercial building and turn it into a residential building. The developer would then not pay property taxes for 20 years. I want to remind everybody that this is the primary source of revenue the county gets from the development community. They do not pay any income taxes in Montgomery County. Only the state gets the corporate income tax. There's no piggyback. So, but for these property taxes, the county does not get money. So you've got to think really hard about doing automatic tax abatements. What's the case for it? First of all, I have no objection to the conversion of commercial to residential properties. No problem helping facilitate that with zoning and height regulations. No problem allowing a by right conversion without having to get a new approval. No problem with building within the approved zoning envelope. And in principle, they should be able to do this. The question is not whether they should be able to do it, but whether we need to subsidize them to do it. And there's no economic imperative that says there's an economic reason for the county to do this. And we already see the markets working in a couple different ways. First of all, I'll use the example of the Discovery building. When they were not able to get the building sufficiently tenanted and get rents that they needed to pay the mortgage, that building was simply given back to the bank by the developer. Developer pays no penalty, is not on the hook for the unpaid mortgage, unlike we would be if we didn't pay the mortgages on our houses. And they were able to walk away from buildings. And this is not the only developer who's walked away from a building and just leave the keys with the bank. When the bank gets the building, what normally happens is they try to find a new tenant. And the advantage they have over the previous landowner is that they don't have a mortgage to the bank that they have to pay. So they can put the building on the market at prices that will actually get the building filled. Whereas the previous owner, if he did that, would still not be able to make the mortgage. So I get why they walked away from the buildings. It's nice to be able to do it without penalty. Developers that have done this, by the way, have been very quickly able to do other developments. You know, this isn't held as a black mark against them. And again, it's not the only building in Montgomery County that did that. The second thing that happens is you don't walk away from the building, but you yourself sell the building to a buyer at a reduced price. And there are examples of that in Montgomery County of projects in downtown Bethesda being sold to somebody else at an incredibly reduced price. But at a price that the buyer knows they can find tenants who will be able to rent it, whereas the owner could not get rents that would support the mortgage. So there are two ways that people can get out of their properties and at the same time go to somebody else to develop or use those properties, and that has no cost to the taxpayer. Third, now here's an example of a conversion. And this, take this picture, it's a real thing. This is a former small office building being converted to apartments. So you can tell from the picture, the brown siding on the building is where the original building was there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories, 75,000 square feet built above the existing building. So this is a small office conversion to apartments. They, like I said, they added 75,000 feet. The building's over 150,000 feet. And Sandy Spring Bank is the financier. Sandy Spring Bank wouldn't have financed this project if it didn't pencil out. This developer had to go in front of Sandy Spring and say, this is the market for housing. I believe I can rent these units. I'm confident it'll happen. This will be my income stream, and I can make it work. And the developer got the loan from Sandy Spring, which they wouldn't have gotten unless the project penciled out. It's proof that it can be done, and it can be done without government subsidy. No subsidy was provided here. There are other conversions in which no subsidy has been provided, because if you get the land for a cheap enough price, and I'm pretty sure they got this building at a pretty low price, they were able to do the conversion without having to rely on subsidies. And in this case, they did a really interesting thing. Instead of just tearing down the building, they left the, you can see this outer wall here, but they left the inner shell. So they basically cleared off everything on every floor of the building, leaving the posts and the concrete slab, and then rebuilt the building as an apartment building after everything was cleared out, which is less expensive than tearing down the building and having to replace everything. But it's an example of someone who could do this without needing a subsidy. If this bill passes, this person could have simply said, I'm going to take that subsidy, even though this penciled out and they didn't need the subsidy. There is no way we should be giving subsidies to people who don't need them. This building adds 178 new residential units, and it allows all the additional square footage is allowed under the existing zoning. And again, no evidence that they need to be exempt from property taxes. I'm additionally concerned about the amendments that apply retroactive eligibility. If you're in front of Park and Planning today with a project for a conversion, you've already got your financing lined up. You already know how this project's going to be built, what it's going to cost, and you know who's going to finance it, because that's why you're asking for approval to build it. You're not going to get an approval and then come back later and try to figure out how to finance the building. So they already knew that this was worth doing before there was a tax giveaway. Now, any of the older projects that are in line now for approval can simply claim this tax credit, even though their actions before Tuesday indicated they could do this project without a subsidy. Now, instead of doing it the way they were normally going to do it, they're going to get a windfall, a complete tax exemption. Every project needs its own analysis of financing and the developer's investment in the project. What gap is the county filling here? Any subsidy, and the county does subsidies. Our housing department has done subsidies to get additional affordable housing. Should be based on filling gaps. We do this all the time for affordable housing. The county should not do any by right pilots to give automatic exemption from 100% of property taxes unless there's a valid reason for giving that exemption. The sponsors have no valid reason, have provided no valid reason why every property that wants to do this should get 100% exemption. The idea that we would make a policy that has no proof of the need for it is really a serious mistake. The county has authority to do pilots. We do pilots. This property, I think the council just raised the requirement for affordable housing from 15% to 17.5%. What that means in the real world is if you build a 100-unit building, you're getting 3 more units. And these are MPDUs. These are not deeply affordable units. You get 3 more units, and you're getting 3 more units for tax exemption of 100%. The tax exemption far exceeds the value or the cost of producing 3 units. It exceeds it every single year. The county would have normally negotiated with the developer over what they needed in order to provide the additional affordable housing. This is getting the affordable housing for an extraordinarily high price. I wish I had that much money to put into affordable housing. So anything, again, anything that would have paid in property taxes for 20 years is now going to be lost. It also competes against other developers with property that is zoned for housing. There are a finite number of people moving here. That's just the fact. And the fact you have more housing ability, the fact that you could have more opportunities to increase the supply has not meant that the supply gets built. And just need to point out that right now, over 80,000 units in our master plans can be built. It's not a failure that they haven't, because the master plans are designed to be built out over 20 or 30 years. So it's not surprising that all of it isn't built. But the fact is that if there's a demand for housing, we have the capacity to build it. Moreover, we have 31,000 units unbuilt that we've already permitted. I will point out that, as the planning director noted, after months of my pointing it out loud, that much of this is high rise. There is limited demand for high rise because it's extraordinarily expensive. Park and Planning, under duress, has changed the zoning on 3 properties to allow them to build smaller buildings in the North Bethesda area, because that's where the demand is, and the lower buildings are more affordable. Part of the reasons we've been constrained on building is Park and Planning's obsession with high rise has locked up acres and acres of land that could otherwise be developed at a reasonable price, because at high rise construction rates, there's not enough demand for units in those price ranges. So we have the capacity to already build this, and you're going to give one group of developers a free pass on property taxes, while another developer buying a lot has to go ahead and pay full bore for the property taxes. And they may not have bought the property tax, they may not have bought their property at a fire sale, whereas much of the property out there right now is available at a fire sale. So the idea that they need to do this to address development in the county is just flat out untrue. The potential's there. We just need zoning for housing in the price ranges to be able to do that. And we need to correct the zoning we've been put in place that is probably not appropriate. So if you add a 200 unit building converted to the building supply, it simply reduces demand for those 200 units that would otherwise be built somewhere else. It's not like just zoning has produced housing. If that were true, we wouldn't have the housing issues we have in the county today. We are zoned for plenty. It's not being built. There's no reason to believe these 200 units would be built in addition to what the likely demand is. They will just simply absorb the demand. And if they absorb it here, that demand doesn't go someplace else. So somebody else who's going to provide full taxes to the county could well be pushed out of not getting their project done because somebody's going to get a free ride. And this is one of the things that really concerns me, is that we're going down a slippery slope where we continue to give away things. And once you start giving it away, everybody wants it given to them. It's not fair to the developers who are currently building housing and paying property taxes. And if you're not going to tax one group of developers for producing market rate housing, how do you justify taxing any of them? This is the thing I worry about. Since we already have some developers claiming that the county needs to subsidize market rate housing, and I've heard this from them, this is not helpful. There's no reason for the county to be subsidizing market rate housing. And this just puts us on the path of subsidizing something that doesn't need it. Council's continuing earlier trends of reducing tax revenue from developers, as we've done with the growth in infrastructure policy and years of reducing impact taxes. All of that's meant that residents wind up paying more because developers pay less. This is a simple math equation. If you've got a certain objective you need to raise, and one participant, the developers, contribute less, the only way to raise that money is to raise the money on taxpayers. And we've done this enough. And we need to stop making this the go-to solution. And that means that residents will wind up paying more. And I've said this before, we've already run the race to the bottom. This county has been in a race to the bottom for a while. While places like Fairfax, Virginia have taxes on commercial property that are 50% higher than ours, we listen to council members talk about the need to be competitive and we must lower our taxes. Our taxes are already lower. There is no place in the Washington region that has lower commercial property taxes than Montgomery County does. None, zero. In fact, DC actually has the most highest taxes in DC region. Their taxes on commercial property worth over $10 million is $1.89. Our taxes are $1.04 right now. So this is a real problem. And as I said this before, we've already won the race to the bottom, and we haven't won any prize for getting there. Despite being the lowest commercial taxes in the region, it doesn't produce jobs, and we need jobs to drive housing growth. We've got other problems with housing growth that have nothing to do with the taxes in this county. It has everything to do with the lack of jobs in this county. And that's something we need to address, and we need to be willing to make the investments like Virginia did that actually allowed them to attract more jobs. Frankly, the actual best outcome for commercial buildings would be that they be re-tenanted with businesses. And because we do need to grow our tax base, and it would not be good if we lost a lot of buildings in prime locations to residential. And then 5 years from now, we're back in a situation where people were wanting to come back to the county and get to locations that are considered prime for commercial buildings and discover those buildings have been converted to residential. I wish that the council had set a lower bar rather than 50% vacancy, but something to closer to 90% vacancy before allowing a by right conversion. I think everybody would agree that, building commercial and having to be able to occupy commercial space is probably in the best economic interest in the county, particularly since we have the zone capacity to build that county otherwise. And in fact, if this were a normal environment and we weren't looking at office vacancies to this extent, we wouldn't even talk about converting an office to residential. We'd be relying on what we've already zoned for. So I hope the council can figure out a way to delay the vote and have more discussion about this. But I'm worried about where we're going, and I'm worried about the impacts on the budget. And the worst impacts obviously aren't going to come this year, but the impacts are surely going to come. There are lots of properties in this county that pay $1 million in property taxes. The county's estimated up to 100 office buildings could be eligible for this. So you can do the math. It's a lot of money that's potentially lost to the county. And we're not in a position to lose revenue. So I wish we wouldn't be doing this right now. On a brighter note, I want to thank the County Council for passing Bill 625, Consumer Protection for Renters, sponsored by Council Member Kristen Mink and co-sponsored by Council President Stewart, Vice President Will Jawando, and Council Member Lutke. This bill will remove an exemption for landlord and tenant issues under the Consumer Protection Law, opening up new county tools to induce compliance when landlords refuse repeatedly to cure housing code violations. I look forward to a bill signing ceremony with council members and tenants. It is unfortunate, but a minority of landlords in this county rely on delaying the fixing of housing code violations or engaging in deceptive trade practices as part of their business model. They rely on a 6-month plus delays in an overburdened district court and the practice of judges to reducing fines to negligible amounts. This has been going on for years. And what's happened is if a landlord has a code violation, they can come in and repeatedly ask for delays before the case gets heard. And they've often gotten those delays. You add that on top of the delays in the court just because of the overburdened nature of the court right now, you might not wind up in court for 9 months. If you get to court and you've fixed the problem the day before, judges have had a tendency to not impose penalties on the landlord. So if the landlord's able to have a tenant live in substandard conditions, it could be faulty plumbing, it could be faulty electric issues, it could be mice, it could be mold, it could be any of these things. And the landlord can delay fixing it, and the tenant has to suffer with it for sometimes all those months until they finally go to court. Then the landlord goes in, says, I fixed it yesterday, and the judge says problem solved, and there's no penalty. There needs to be a penalty. It should be expensive to violate the code and put tenants into difficult living situations. That apparently does not bother them. So I'm glad the council passed it. I'm glad it wound up being a unanimous vote. And I'm looking forward to the Office of Consumer Protection and the Office of the County attorney who'll now be able to sue landlords in circuit court who've demonstrated history of property neglect, noncompliance with citations, and deceptive trade practices in order to seek injunctive relief and damages. Truth is, most landlords don't do these things, but those who do will quickly learn they must either change their business model or face more serious consequences provided in this bill. And I wish the landlords who've done a good job and have not been affected by this would stop acting like this is going to be an attack on them. It's not meant for most people because most people don't do this stuff. I mean, it's not going to be used as a one size fits all solution for code violations. It's meant for the worst actors who are least willing to comply. Most of you don't fall in that category. So I think you can relax and not feel any angst over this because you're not the targets. This bill is a major step forward. I do hope the bad actors who've gotten away with mistreating their customers for too long can read the tea leaves and understand their behaviors are going to have to change. This month is Earth Month. The county is once again really happy to be able to celebrate this. I doubt if there'll be a national celebration this year. Last year, the Department of Economic Protection urged you to act now, and this year we got started early by encouraging residents to take the pledge weeks ago and to be climate smart. Being climate smart means making changes at home to be more sustainable. Small changes like preparing meals to reduce food waste or taking public transportation when it's convenient add up to make a big difference. On Friday, Montgomery County will announce the expansion of recycling collection services, which lines up with our campaign for aiming for zero waste. We're committed to finding innovative solutions to waste management and enhancing sustainability. And this campaign helped us evaluate and implement the best available solutions for a greener future. If the county continues to expand recycling operations, we can minimize the volume of trash created, we'll continue to make progress toward a zero waste future. With everything working against us in terms of climate change and federal resistance to clean energy, in fact, federal resistance to the reality of climate change, we have to continue to lead by example, show real progress on how beneficial climate smart policies can be for our community in the hopes that others would be able to follow suit. It is good to be an example sometimes. This month is also Autism Acceptance Month. And this month, we're going to shine the spotlight on autism and ask everyone to recognize this as National Autism Acceptance Month. It helps us celebrate and honor the experiences and identities of people with autism. More than anything, we want to emphasize understanding, inclusion, and support. In the past, the month of April has helped us to highlight the awareness of the condition. We are beyond that now and want to move toward meaningful acceptance. I'm proud that our community has developed a commission for individuals with developmental disabilities. The IDD Commission works for and on behalf of all people and is familiar with the IDD network. And our school system is home to the Comprehensive Autism Preschool Program, which begins with children as young as 3 years old. And focus is increasingly on language, learning, and adaptive skills, and preparing them for success in school and life. I can speak from personal experience about the importance of acceptance. I've had a foster son. At one point, I had another foster son who was living with us, and I've had him since like 1975 or something. When I first got him and would go out in public or go to ball games with him, I used to play on a softball team up in Burtonsville and Laurel. If my sons went to sit in the stands would empty out. People would go find another place to sit. They were nervous. They weren't used to seeing people with disabilities. Some of their mannerisms, made people uncomfortable, though there was nothing to be uncomfortable about. They just were different. By the end of the season, people went back to the stands. They realized that the kids were harmless. They weren't going to do anything. They actually had a sense of humor, my kids did. And enough so that sometimes they go sit on the opposing bench and cheer against me. So I knew my kids had a sense of humor and can deal with it. And I discovered, as people became exposed the folks with disabilities, that it was easier for them to accept it. A lot of what people thought was based on fear, the fact that, people with disabilities for a long time have been kept in closets. And I think one of the most important things we do is to make sure they don't have to live in isolation or work in isolation and exist in closets, but they're actually able to be out in public, to work jobs they're capable of working at, and to have the kind of future where, they can have an identity. I think we assume because somebody, has something like autism, that they don't have a self-awareness, and it would be a mistake to assume that. They see and feel everything we see and feel. So we need to be aware of that. And I think that's why one of the things that makes this so important to bring about acceptance of autism. It's more than just a diagnosis for people. It's their identity, a community, it's a lived experiences that encompass both challenges and triumphs. And every day we have individuals with autism contributing in a meaningful way to our community. They want as much independence as possible. Our network of community partners helps support these efforts through autism education and resources. To sort of end where we started, the cuts and reductions at HHS, as well as the rejection of science by the Trump administration, is going to have detrimental impacts on progress that has been made to understand and mitigate autism-related symptoms and causes. Our knowledge of autism has come a long way over a short period of time due to all the work and research both in the public and private sectors. And this regression makes me angry. Maybe because I read a lot of scientific journals and I'm curious about what's being discovered. It's my nature. But I wish people read more, because I think if more people looked at what was being done, where the research is pointing, what kind of things scientists are discovering, you'd probably have a lot more hope for the world than many people have today. I mean, it's easy to be negative and look at all these problems we face as intractable and without solution. But the reality is, science is actually pointing to ways forward. They can deal with many of the things that bedevil us today. And situations, illnesses like autism, are things that, in the future are likely to find solutions. And that's why research and all the work that people like NIH and, companies that work on cures directly, it's why all that stuff's important, and why it's going to be a real tragedy to lose that. We're deliberately trying to make our nation unhealthy and less safe. And never in my life did I see any president deliberately lead us down that road. But here we are. So before I answer questions, I'll let my health team give an update and any other opportunity to share before we come back to you. Turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Just really briefly, we have hit a nice milestone on respiratory illnesses that we know that it was a nasty flu season, but we have finally crossed the threshold of 2 consecutive weeks with our collective respiratory illness hospitalizations being less than 10 per 100,000, which means hospitals and healthcare facilities can remove source control or masking if they were doing that. We continue to be in close collaboration with them, with our partners on that. Just as respiratory season is ending, allergy season is beginning, and so the sneezes and coughs that were from the colds are being traded for sneezes and coughs and runny noses from allergies. So, but there is a little bit of overlap. So if you have a little bit of a fever, don't rule out a little bit of lingering cold. I do just want to recognize, especially in light of today being Autism Awareness Day, and we talk a lot about the importance of vaccines, and the MMR vaccine has brought concern around risks of autism, and just want to reiterate that there has been no proven link between MMR or any other vaccines and autism or autism spectrum disorders. That myth has been busted many, many times through many, many studies. And again, want to offer, there is very much safety, lots of safety amongst vaccines, and the risks that we see by not getting a vaccine far exceed the risk of getting one. So want to put that public service announcement out there again as a reminder. And I will turn to Dr. Bridgers.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. One note, Mr. County Executive, thank you again for all the work that you continue to do in supporting those individuals who are at risk or who have lost their jobs at the federal level. The Department of Health and Human Services continues to work collaboratively with our Office of Human Resources and partners such as nonprofit Montgomery and WorkSource Montgomery to host job fairs and to really look at our vacancies to help complement and support some of those who are in need. So I wanted to say a word of thanks to you this morning, this afternoon, for your efforts in that space. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Stoddard.
Yes.
No updates. I just want to be here for any questions that might happen.
Okay. Thank you very much. Members of the media, any questions for the county executive and or the county officials? Jeannie Bixby, if that's up today, go ahead, Jeannie.
Hi, Mark. On the coming back to the topic of taxes and tax credits, the council passed a homeowners tax credit expansion yesterday. What are your thoughts on that? Are you going to sign this?
I have not seen what they passed yet. So, I mean, we're looking, I'm not sure. So can you tell me what they passed and I'll tell you what my thoughts are.
So it's an expansion to the county supplement to the state program for homeowners. So it expands the income, the income that you have, the low income that you have to be at has been increased by the council.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought you were talking like an income tax or something. That's not a problem.
That's all you have to say. Not a problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Marianne Shastad, Montgomery Community Media. Good afternoon, Marianne.
Good afternoon. Thank you. On the layoffs that happened yesterday, is the county able to have any estimate on how many county residents lost their jobs yesterday?
I think it's going to take a couple of days before we get that. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows how many were actual county residents out of the people who lost their jobs because they don't provide information. At least they haven't provided information as of this morning about, the residents of the people who were laid off. I don't know if the federal government has to comply with what the private sector does, where they have to notify us of job losses in our state. So I don't know that for sure yet. But
thank
we'll
you.
get those numbers because I think the last numbers I saw as of this morning were numbers that came from the end of February.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marianne. Members of the media, any other questions this afternoon? No more questions? Going once? Twice? I guess not. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Stay safe and we'll see you next time. Have a great afternoon.